Hi, and welcome to today's webcast. I'm Martin Johnson, VP of Marketing at Polyrize, and I will be going through the findings of our 2020 Shadow Identity Report developed by Polyrize SaaS Threat Labs. This inaugural report covers key trends and challenges organizations face when trying to control unsupervised identities and shadow privileges, zero in on high-impact users and actions, and secure access and usage across a fragmented cloud environment that includes SaaS and IaaS. The goal is to provide rigorously researched and analyzed data to raise awareness of the need to secure the new identity-defined perimeter, which many organizations currently overlook. Note that all stats in this report are drawn from anonymized and aggregated customer activity on the Polyrize platform. This includes an analysis of 200,000 cloud identities and hundreds of millions of cloud assets. But first, let me tell you a little bit about us. As identities move outside the traditional network perimeter, organizations face a challenging new security landscape, where SaaS is the new IT and identity the new perimeter. Polyrize offers a unique unified access model that analyzes users' privileges and correlates them with their actions across cloud services, helping organizations to effectively control unsupervised identities, shadow privileges, and high-impact actions, as well as protect cloud identity privileges and their access across the new identity-defined perimeter. You can visit Polyrize.com to learn more about us and the Polyrize platform. In addition, our newly launched SaaS Threat Labs has a mission to provide resources like the Shadow Identity Report, alerts on newly discovered vulnerabilities and breaches, and helpful tips to security practitioners that help secure identities and privilege-critical workflows. So keep an eye on our blog, where you can keep on top of the latest threats and vulnerabilities and get the latest on securing identities and privileges. Now on to the report findings. First, I want to talk about high-impact identities. These are high impact because, left unchecked, they can cause serious damage to your organization. This is not only because they may be vulnerable to exploitation or exhibit high-risk behavior, but also because they may have access to large amounts of business-critical data stored and shared in cloud services. So our first insight was that 43% of cloud identities sit abandoned or at minimum unused. Over time, all of your employees and contractors will accrue more and more identities as they gain access to an increasing number of cloud services. But many of these identities are usually abandoned when users are no longer using a cloud service and then become sitting ducks for account takeovers and therefore substantially increase your organization's attack surface. Polyrize Threat Labs' recommendation, then, is to continually monitor all of your organization's identities to quickly identify unused ones for immediate removal from all of your operation-critical SaaS apps and cloud services, notably G Suite, Office 365, Salesforce, and AWS. Next, we found that 3 out of 4 cloud identities belonging to your external contractors remain active after they leave. What that means is that most ex-contractors don't get fully deprovisioned when they leave. That is, they sometimes retain access to some or all of your organization's cloud services when they can continue to access and potentially steal IP and data. This is especially at issue when you have cloud services that are not managed through your SSO. So our recommendation is that when a contractor leaves, their identities, privileges, and access be fully cataloged for complete removal. In addition, their activities over the last 60 days or so prior to termination should be audited for potential data theft or other compromises. Next, we also found that roughly a quarter of identities in SaaS apps and half of IaaS services are non-human. Non-human identities include APIs, serviceless applications, virtual machines, and so on. Unlike human identities, they are under the threat of compromise 24/7 because they are always logged in and are typically overlooked by security teams since they operate in the background. Polyrize recommends that, like human identities, non-human ones need to be closely monitored to ensure that they haven't been compromised and that their permissions are not overly broad in relation to the functions that they are required to perform. So let's turn now to misconfigured cloud privileges. User privileges get misconfigured or are changed over time for a number of reasons. Sometimes admins make errors and inadvertently grant excessive, sometimes admin-level privileges to non-privileged users. In other cases, malicious users might abuse bugs, design flaws, or configuration oversights in an operating system or app to bypass the security team and escalate a user's privileges. The end result is users who have privileges that are more broad than what the security team intended and don't match what they need to get their jobs done, violating the principle of least privilege access. So we found that 44% of cloud user privileges are misconfigured. This can, as we said, open an organization up to account takeovers and data exfiltration by users with overly broad privileges. We recommend that user privileges be continuously monitored for misconfigurations and unauthorized changes so that overly broad permissions can be right-sized and least privilege access effectively enforced. The caveat here is that, as with monitoring stale and unused identities, trying to monitor permission changes manually can be next to impossible, so selecting an automated solution for this is critical. So our next finding was that 3 out of 5 privileged cloud users are admins that were not approved by the security team. These shadow admins are privileged users who are only privileged because they gained unauthorized elevated access privileges outside of the security team's purview, so they can perform admin level changes that can cause damage across an entire cloud service. Interestingly, most of our customers, when asked if they know who their shadow admins are, have no clue. So our Threat Labs team recommends that shadow admins be monitored the same way you monitor regular admins, though in most cases their privileges need to be right-sized to their job role and aligned with the privileges of the non-privileged user group to which they were officially assigned by IT. We also found that 5% of identities have had their privileges elevated in the past 90 days by someone outside of the security team. Security teams want to ensure that non-privileged users have only the minimum amount of privileges needed to do their jobs, without the ability to change core user or account settings. However, through exploiting a bug, design flaw, or app misconfiguration, a user may gain admin or privileged access without the security team's oversight or sanction. That means that this seemingly small 5% of users can cause tremendous damage throughout the services for which their permissions have been elevated. As a result, we strongly recommend that users with elevated privileges be continually identified and monitored so that their privileges can be right-sized or removed. In addition, security teams should review privilege misconfigurations and security gaps. For instance, privilege escalation rights in Salesforce using Apex that may enable privileges to be elevated without a security team's knowledge. Finally, let's talk about high-risk cloud activities. Now, the biggest and most widespread problem we found was that 15% of employees are regularly transferring business-critical data to their personal cloud accounts. Business-critical data doesn't stay in the cloud service to which it was originally uploaded. Lateral movement of data means that it can be transferred to other cloud services, including private accounts. At best, this means that the data resides outside of your security team's control, and at worst is an indicator that the data has been exfiltrated with malicious intent. Security teams need to enforce usage policies that prevent documents from being transferred out of sanctioned apps to private accounts. In addition, we found that 16% of all cloud users perform privileged actions, and 20% of them have access to sensitive corporate data. Privileged actions are ones typically reserved for admins, but are often performed by shadow admins, which should be of highest concern to organizations, especially if perpetrators also have access to large amounts of data. These actions can negatively impact the entire cloud service or a major part of their experience for everyone, not just a single user or dataset. The Cloud Threat Lab team recommends that security teams constantly review all identity privileges to identify shadow admins and privileged users and right-size their permissions to the minimum needed to do their jobs or remove their access if it is determined that their privileges were used for malicious purposes. So in summary, what should you do to help keep identities secure in the cloud? First, you should segregate your cloud workflows by group, department, or location to determine what apps and resources they and their associated employees and contractors need to do their jobs. If possible, roll out new cloud services incrementally for remote access, allowing only a manageable number of individuals from each group to try out the app and their associated access privileges before full deployment. This will also help limit identity sprawl. Next, adhere to the principle of least privilege access by ensuring employees have the minimum access privileges needed to do their job. This also means placing controls on privileged users to prevent them from abusing admin privileges for non-admin related activities that can place your organization at high risk. Next, make sure that the file and folder sharing permissions within your sanctioned apps are restricted within specific groups, depending on usage. This will help prevent accidental oversharing of business-critical data. Realize that a sensitive file carelessly dropped into a folder with overly broad sharing rights will inherit those same rights and be automatically exposed. Next, set up processes for offboarding remote employees and contractors. This process can be a challenge since many cloud services are managed outside of your SSO. Adopting a unified cross-service identity and access security solution that allows you to identify and revoke permissions when employees or contractors leave the company is recommended. This will effectively reduce your attack surface by minimizing the risk of account takeovers and data loss. And finally, reprioritize your security team resources to cloud data protection. Focus on preventing data leakage and account takeovers. So I want to end with an admittedly shameless product pitch here. If you want to compare how your security team's efforts to manage cloud identities and privileges stack up to our findings in the Shadow Identity Report, and be able to set security guardrails around them to reduce your attack surface and detect and respond to threats, you can deploy the Polyrize Cloud Security Platform. This platform is designed to protect cloud identities and privileges across the fragmented cloud perimeter, including your operation-critical SaaS apps and IaaS services. Polyrize is a very light, easy to deploy and manage API-based SaaS solution, with APIs into over 13 of your most commonly used cloud services. Go to polyrize.com or contact us at info@polyrize.com. Thank you and have a great day.